Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Just out of curiosity, does anybody know what kind of map this is?
Letter map.
Letter map. All right. It's a mind map. All right. It's okay. It's a rhetorical question. Here we go. Please work. Absolutely. Then it stopped sharing. Awesome. '21st century political potpourri. Oh my goodness. What's a potpourri? Anybody?
Oh, I know. Okay. Isn't it like that, like flower?
That flower thing. Okay. It could have flowers in it. Anyone else? Potpourri? Anybody?
Isn't that what you use? Like,
Oh,
that's like what you put in the toilet before you go to the bathroom, so it smells good after.
That's a different.
It's only in your house, I think.
It's a mixture of dried petals and spices placed in a bowl or small sack to perfume clothing or a room.
Okay. So that is the definition of potpourri. Thank you, Ben H. But what is it? And how does it fit here?
It's a
Sir.
mixture. It's a mix of things.
Yes, it's a mix of things. It's a variety, a hodgepodge, if you will. Okay, so I have to work on doing a class as Dr. Seuss. I have to work on doing an entire class in a foreign language. Arabic would just be hysterical, but that would take me like 4 years to learn. And I think I need to do it in the delivery of John Mulaney. And just do the whole class like him. All right. Hope he stays. Yes, hope he stays healthy. All right. Sorry about the divorce. Yeah. All right. In addition to the myriad of other political issues facing the world today, there are other concerns heretofore unmentioned in the notes. In other words, here's all the stuff we didn't talk about. Because you might see it a week from tomorrow. Or Thursday. No, yeah, Thursday. All right. And if any of you typed any of that, like there's not a piece of information here. Sir, this is like a slide because this person felt like typing.
Well, you could check their political issues for Facebook.
Who typed? Who typed? Okay. Way to throw her under the bus. Okay. The Korean Peninsula from... I can do whatever I want. I'm home. That was the title. No, 20th century potpourri.
Political
21st century political potpourri. Potpourri. It's French. 21st century political potpourri. Potpourri. I think. All right. Here's the Korean Peninsula from space at night. This spot right here is North Korea at night.
Is it because they turn off their lights? Or because they're
starving.
Two things. One, they have rolling. North Korea has rolling blackouts. Their infrastructure is so poor. That's kind of like our oil industry.
Wait, is that include big government buildings?
Yeah.
Is that little dot the capital?
Pyongyang. Yes.
Is the big dot Seoul?
That's Seoul.
Not very.
Seoul. Yes, Mary Gilbert.
This is so unrelated. I'm sorry.
Welcome to this class. Go
I
ahead.
cannot remember the name of, or the term for when Europeans take over African countries because they feel bad and feel it's their responsibility.
Come on, white man's burden.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yes, there's Korea, and yet their army is most nattily attired. Like that's where the money goes. Weapons, the military in general. Just right to the drip. All right.
How have they not let it collapse already?
They've been propped up by communist countries their entire life. China doesn't want them to collapse. Kind of, sort of. All right. Korea remains a hermit kingdom. This has been its title throughout its history in world history. They have kept to themselves. Their language is unique to themselves. It's not a part of any other language family.
Well,
It's not.
wait, I thought it was Korean. And then South Koreans differ because they brought on like American servers.
No. Talk about the written language, the native language. Yeah. It's its own family. It's AP Hub thing. Yeah.
Not be stupid, but is there any airports or like?
You can visit. You can visit. As an American, there are 2 weeks out of the year where you are welcome into the country as a tourist.
Look it up on YouTube.
There's like two international airports, one in Pyongyang and then one like north of that, like kind of near China and Russia, but no one can go there, no Americans. It's like Chinese and Russian people or something.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what the other North Korean city would be that we fought in the Korean War. All right. They are largely isolated from the outside world, but they are believed, though, they have developed nuclear weapons in 2006. One of the 8 countries with nuclear weapons.
Do they have like the ultra long range ones?
They can't hit us yet. Maybe California. That wouldn't break my heart. As long as my brother and my niece were evacuated. All right. If you have anything out there, get them all out. Save Disneyland. Put it in like Montana. That way people want to go there. All right.
Like North Dakota, yeah.
Well, they got Mount Rushmore.
No, that's
No,
that's
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
All right. North Korea's communist dictator Kim Jong-un practices a foreign policy of brinkmanship. That's a Cold War term. Continuity. It's pushing things to the brink, man. It's pushing things as far as you can go without actually pushing the button and causing a war. That is brinkmanship. There's a Cold War tactic. That movie we watched, there was a good bit of that going on in there. Of brinkmanship, how far can we push this to get the other person to do what we want?
What's the person that's supposed to work?
Then it obviously didn't work. Or it worked too well.
Why did they?
Go ahead.
I mean, why would they try? Why would they try to threaten us? I mean, he can't be that stupid. They'll legitimately think he would win a war against the United States.
Nobody would win.
No.
No one's there.
The only way to win is not to play.
Well, if they didn't have a military, they would just take over North Korea extremely, extremely easily, and then
Who?
have jobs.
Who?
America and South Korea.
America wouldn't look. There are people in North Korea who have generations of history in South Korea of family, and they can't see them. The Koreans want one Korea. The problem comes from the fact that the North Koreans want it to look like theirs, and South Korea wants it to look like theirs. So, look, if I said this in my other classes, I'll say it again. All you got to do is let North Korea see South Korea. Like, oh, and it probably end, but they're not fed the truth. You think our media is biased? Stop.
Love that movie.
Stop.
Not biased if there's only one opinion.
No, it's a bias. It's biased to favor their ideology.
Nothing's not biased.
Everything's biased, yeah. All right. North Korea can tip new type intercontinental ballistic rockets with more powerful nuclear warheads and keep any cesspool of evils in the earth, including the U.S. mainland, within our striking range. If the American imperialists provoke us a bit, we will not hesitate to slap them with a preemptive nuclear strike. The United States must choose. It's up to you whether the nation called the United States exists on this planet or not.
A lot of talk about that.
Well, and if you think about it, he has to. Again, just like, there was look, here's a chance where a movie actually is a teaching tool. Where Brezhnev was a very, your notes tell you, your text tells you, Hollywood told you, a very not Stalin ruler, a very kinder, gentler communist. And there are hardliners in the Politburo, in the Russian government, Soviet government, who probably would rather him toe the Stalinist line. So you have to use big words to make people at home happy, more in some cases more so than scaring the person across the shore. So he has people at home who need to hear this. I've watched news specials. Vice does a really good job of filming stuff. They went into Korea and filmed some stuff, and it's startling. Don't watch the one where they went and took the eye doctors in. There are other videos that are better that show a different picture of North Korea. But his sister's the hardline. But because she's a girl, I don't think they'll let her rule. I think it's part of the issue. Diplomacy, warnings, and sanctions against North Korea have been unsuccessful. They continue to threaten South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. And this is by degree of threat. Like they're just like Seoul, South Korea is like 100 miles from the border. Like you could probably throw a rock and hit Seoul from the demilitarized zone. Then Japan, who has no offensive military. That's the rules after World War II. It's all defensive purposes. And then us. So they, and then there's their writing. Nuclear proliferation or the spread of nuclear weapons, as evidenced by North Korea, poses a serious threat to world safety. So here you go. The red states, the red countries are countries that are part of the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty who have nuclear weapons. America, France, Great Britain, Russia, China. These are countries that have nuclear weapons. Pakistan, India, and North Korea, and who have not joined the treaty. Oh, Israel also has nuclear weapons. These are nuclear-free zones. And all these white states are states sharing nuclear weapons. American nuclear weapons. We have nuclear weapons where you see white.
So
What about the ones that are like slightly more gray, like Germany or Turkey and Italy? I think the gray is where we have.
Yeah, the gray is. Those are
And the
NATO.
white
That's,
is no.
yeah, those are NATO states. I'm sorry. Yeah, I misread. Yeah, those are NATO states.
Oh, I
So
thought you meant all the ones.
no, sorry.
I was kind of hype about that.
No, you can't have nukes in Canada.
That's nice.
Like when our submarine, when I went to Halifax, which by the way, go. It's a nice place. Halifax, Nova Scotia is really nice. Pretty, it's on the coast. It's one of those places though that no matter where you go, it's uphill. Like it's just hills, and every hill's up. It just felt like I was always walking uphill. But their submarines are nuclear powered, so when their shift is over, they would literally lock the hatches and go home. And they'd have a couple of guys stand and watch. And because ours are nuclear powered, we had to park like on the other side of town, like away from the town. So some states are some countries are a little more less receptive to nuclear weapons. All right.
Mr. Story.
Yeah.
So obviously North Korea is not going to attack America because they'd get absolutely destroyed. But why don't they attack South Korea?
Because they would get absolutely destroyed by America.
Okay. That's what I thought you were going to say.
And Russia and anybody else. Look, one missile. I don't know. We've engaged in the only limited nuclear attack. And I think we were limited because that's all we had. The 2 atomic bombs we dropped.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. We're the only country to use nuclear weapons on another country. Ever. We're number one. All right. And it was only because I think that's all we had. Like it took like 8 days to get the next one. So I don't think it's possible to engage in a limited nuclear war. And I don't want to test the theory. So, all right. Huh?
I don't think anyone wants it.
I hope not. There's somebody out there. All right. So this shows you the number of nuclear warheads and bombs in the world. We are number 2 with Russia. Israel has 80 to 200. I don't know how many they developed, how many they bought. Pakistan, North Korea, India, China, France. Look at France. And then the UK. The US has reduced its stockpile by 84%. So just do that math in your head. Yes.
How do you get rid of it?
It's an excellent question. Wait, is there? Oh, that's just Miss Sims joining us. How do you get rid of a nuke, smart people? No, you don't detonate it.
In North Dakota.
You don't detonate them. You don't detonate them. Oh my God. No, you don't detonate them.
Put them really deep underground.
Jeez.
What do you do?
That's why no one listens.
The entire state of North Dakota has a half-life. All right, no,
Everything.
I know your dad's a science teacher. I know. All right, no, you take them apart, you disarm them, and then you bury the nuclear waste. Or Nevada, or idiots who say, I know, put it in the ocean. Space, because, nothing falls from space.
Yes, because that's. They lose their.
All right. Yes.
What do you think would happen if we shot a nuclear warhead into space, it comes back down? What do you think would happen on re-entry? Do you think it would explode?
They're not supposed to explode. But the speed at which they were traveling would probably destroy.
They would disintegrate.
But normally.
Yeah, but
It wouldn't
wouldn't
disintegrate like the plutonium or whatever you use because that's very dense. The plutonium, the entire bomb would disintegrate,
Right.
and then the plutonium would probably just fall in the ocean.
Yeah, it would just be inert and go kasproosh.
Because you need a detonator to actually explode.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we've already destroyed it over Antarctica.
Well, then I'd rather it blow up on me and die quickly. Although no ozone will be equally as quick. No ozone?
It's like 5 minutes until.
Yeah. Yeah.
5 minutes.
We're all bacon in like a nanosecond. All right. Between 1945 and 1990, 70,000 plus nuclear bombs were built because, we can.
Russia got all rid of a lot of it too.
They did. They did. There were various treaties, SALT I, SALT II, a bunch of different treaties during the Cold War. The United States and Russia control 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. North Korea, Britain, France, India, Pakistan, China, and Israel, and maybe Iran, one day, have nukes. That's it.
I would think
Australia had a program. They scrapped it. They said, nope, we don't need it. Your next question?
Is it possible for one of these countries to have nuclear weapons that, the world doesn't know about?
Possible. But that have to be like a serious James Bond, super subterranean, Austin Powers, Dr. Evil lab to build it with nobody knowing it. Unless,
I mean, a lot of countries are probably lying about how many.
who cares how many? One's enough. The only way it couldn't be found is if the security is being run by our oil pipelines. All right. But we shouldn't waste money on infrastructure. Infrastructures are a necessity. Tensions have eased between nuclear power since the Cold War, with the exception of North Korea and who it doesn't like, with the exception of Pakistan and India, because that whole partition in 1948, and then the Iranian thing. Do they, don't they? So tensions have eased. They're never going to go away because they exist. The weapons exist. Now, my submarine was nuclear powered, but we were not the boats that carried the intercontinental ballistic missiles. Those were the other boats. They were right in the middle of the boat, 18 of them. I think 18 of them. And if you ran 18 laps around the missile compartment, it was a mile. So ironically, you get your exercise by running around nuclear missiles. There our stadium, no, the submarine I was on is the length of an American football field. But it's kind of icebergish. You don't see a whole lot of it on the surface. Most of it's underwater. See? The first ones were like the Hunley and things like that. They were a bust. German,
The one next to the Yorktown's tiny.
yeah, that's my wife. I took the family down there. I got all excited. I said, "This is kind of where I would work on a modern boat." And then my wife was like, "I gotta get out of here," and she just ran to the sunlight. Like she could not handle being under there. The possibility of a terrorist organization acquiring a nuclear weapon remains a threat. Not to mention that there are now suitcase nukes.
And they also have dirty bombs.
Yeah, that's just chemicals and stuff.
It has some nuclear radiation.
I know.
It's mostly a terror.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Does, the Pakistan still support terrorists?
Probably.
Doesn't Pakistan have nukes?
Yeah. They could, but again, if you're Pakistan, even if, it's a good question. Like Pakistan has nuclear weapons, and Pakistan has been known to support terrorist organizations. But would you want to arm somebody who could potentially turn on you? So that I think. I mean, these are all assumptions. I'm thinking that's got to go into your policy making. You sure you're not going to bomb? You know what I mean? In 2012, the U.S., the UN, and the EU, that's the United States, United Nations, European Union, all placed sanctions on Iran for developing nuclear material to generate electricity and possibly bombs. It is important to note that the radioactive element needed is not the same. I think you need a heavier plutonium for the bombs than you do to generate electricity. And by the way, all nuclear,
You can use uranium-234,
but you have to process it differently.
well, you get uranium and you can separate it into two
Right,
uraniums.
right.
We use uranium in like armor-piercing bullets, like the non-radioactive one. Like not armor-piercing, but like heavy bullets.
Okay.
Because it's incredibly dense. And it's
To
more-
what end? Sorry, never mind. I'm not gonna moralize at the moment. By the way, a nuclear reactor is really just a big steam engine. All you're doing is creating steam to turn a turbine to make electricity. Turbine.
Same thing with like a coal factory.
Right, it's the same thing. It's just a big steam engine. And that big tower you see is not the reactor. That's just where the steam goes. That's just where the temperature, that's just steam. The reactor is away from the towers. All right.
It's mostly in the building.
Yep, those are cooling towers.
What are the sanctions?
Economic. And advise, yeah, we're going to make it hard. We're going to make you angry with us so that you won't build a nuclear weapon.
Or you're already angry at us. So
Right, we'll make you angrier. That's right. Iran is decidedly anti-West. We talked about that yesterday, or 2 days ago, Friday, with the westernization of Southwest Asia, that they have a very anti-Western view. They want to destroy Israel. That is not hyperbole. In fact, Israel exists because we take a vested interest in Israel existing. At the end of the day, because America cares, Israel exists. Hey, Reed, don't forget, it's there too. And it does have ties to terrorist groups. And again, as this person is op-editing here, not ideal potential nuclear power. Okay. Nobody is an ideal nuclear power. Because humans are humans. All right.
That's why we developed weapons.
To deter, yes. If we have these and you have these, we know neither one of us will use them because we're not dumb. In 2015, Iran signed an agreement to limit nuclear research and to submit to the United States in a UN inspection. They agreed to this if we listed economic sanctions. And people would argue that's why you do the sanctions. To get the other country to change their policy, and then when they do, you lift the sanctions. You basically just stop sending stuff. You stop sending aid, or you stop sending food. Like a sanction is to stop it. Cut them off. Just cut them off.
That's what we did.
That's what we do to everybody. We do it to North Korea and Russia. Russia was their their sugar daddy until the communist era ended. Like, really, Russia kept North Korea afloat.
And the US did with the sanctions?
Excuse me?
The US lifted the sanctions?
Some of them, yes. And the UN did too. Another potential destabilizing force in the Middle East is the desire of Kurdish people. This PowerPoint is so validating to everything we cover. Non-Arab Muslims. So they're Muslims. Remember, Islam, to be a Muslim means you're Islamic, and Islamic, it means you worship Allah and Muhammad and the teaching in the Quran. Does not mean you're from Arabia, even though that's where it started. But safe to say, Arabian Muslims probably see themselves here, vice every other Muslim, just like in China, you're either Han Chinese or you're not. There's that kind of thing. Connecticut, you're either a WASP, you're either a New Englander, or you're not. No, I'm kidding. Trust me, I'm kidding. But they want to have their own country. And remember, they're in the western part of Turkey. They're also in they're in the eastern part of Turkey, the western part of Iraq. They're in the southern, they're in Syria. They're in 4 countries. There is a large Kurdish population. So just carve it all up. Give them Kurdistan. The only problem is it'd be, I think, landlocked. And that's not good. Oh, look. Never mind. Here they are. Millions of Kurds live in Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Armenia, and Syria. And they face harsh repression, especially in Iraq and Turkey. These people, more than anybody else, defeated ISIL. Not the United States, not the UN.
ISIL?
ISIL. It's what you should call that group.
ISIL?
ISIL. ISIL.
Are you talking about, like, you're saying we should call ISIS ISIL?
Yeah.
Or another? Okay, you're talking about.
Yeah, ISIL.
What did they do?
Who? They fought them. That's where they were. They defeated them. They kicked them out of Mosul. Their army defeated them more than we did, because they had a vested interest in getting them out. First of all, they're most assuredly threatened by them. Like, their lives are more in danger by them. And secondly, if you are a nation, which is the Kurds are, and you desire the formation of a state, it might not be a bad idea to help the people with the power to make you a state. So from a purely pragmatic approach, they were involved because it served their best interests. From a purely human approach, I don't want to die, so they're going. And they're not true to the word. They're both Muslims. ISIL is a Muslim group. The Kurds are Muslim. Just like there are different forms and interpretations of the Christian word, there are different forms and interpretations of the Islamic word. Yes, sir.
Where would we put them? Like, what state? Where?
I don't know. That's the issue.
I mean, they could.
But if they can, if Israel can claim that's our historic homeland, then all they do is go find their historic homeland and say here.
But
I don't know.
if they're just non-Arab, there are like a ton of different ethnicities.
Well, correct. They're here, but their ethnicity, they are Kurdish. That's how they see themselves. That's their ethnicity. All right.
How would you define their ethnicity?
Whatever their Kurds are. Kurdistan is the unofficial, that's where they live. But there are no fixed borders. See, a state country has fixed borders, has a fixed population, has a central government, has a semblance of a working economy. A nation is a nation, but when they decide, you know what, we should form a state, that's when things change, and that's where they are. But how do you do that? Because you're right, you're in Iran, you're in Iraq, you're in Syria a little bit, and you're in Turkey. So, yeah. I thought it was going to be something deep, man.
Nah,
All right.
nothing on the
How
right.
do you spell ISIL? Is it ISAL or
ISIL. And the Levant. Yep.
Why do you want to call it?
Because to recognize it as ISIS, you acknowledge its statehood and you validate its existence.
Why would you call it? Why would you an IM?
I just told you why.
But what's the L stand?
Levant. Levant.
ISIS means Syria. They either call it the Levant is the last one. Yeah.
Where's Levant?
It's a region. It's the whole area. All right, look it up. Kurds supported by the United States and the EU, they are helping fight ISIS. She says ISIS. So this is an older PowerPoint. But national ambitions remain a distant prospect. Again, for the reasons that you guys were talking about, where do you put it? Where do you carve it up? Who do you say, hey, listen, you mind giving up? You mind?
We didn't have any problem with doing that with Israel.
Well, and we didn't, but it took a long time. And think about how it's been since we've done this. You know, this whole part of the world, since we formed this state, to do that again, is that benefit? Like, what are the consequences? I don't know what to do. Like I said before, you either give everybody who wants to be their own country a country, or you don't let anybody. But and then again, who are we as Americans to say, you know, who cares about your ancestral homeland? Oh no, wait, that is us. All right. In 2010, the Arab Spring uprisings called for democratic changes across the Middle Southwest Asia, organized through social media. Why, Gia? I'll tell you. Because Southwest Asian countries are ruled by old people, boomers, who didn't understand what social media was. They didn't understand. They knew what it was, but they did not understand the far-reaching effects, the impact social media had. They thought all you did was talk to your family. They did not realize that a kid in Tunis, where this started, could talk to a kid in Egypt, or a kid in Syria, or a kid, you know, and coordinate all this. This was a coordinated movement of 35s and under to bring democracy to this part of the world. And it was through social media, which is now why all social media in most of those countries is state controlled. What?
How did that even work?
What?
Like, they control what they see on social media?
Their point exactly. Yeah. No, you're right. Does anybody know the one event that was the tipping point of this? I realize you guys were.
I've never heard of it.
You've never heard of the Arab
I've
Spring?
heard of it.
I've heard of it, but I don't know.
Okay, that's okay. I keep forgetting you were 4. I keep remember. I teach freshmen every year, so everybody in this room is 15. But it's next year they're 15, and like so I don't feel I feel you're all the same age, but you're all younger when this stuff happened. So next year's kids will have been 3. Okay, so when you're a senior in high school, there's the year after you graduate high school, the freshmen in this class, this will have happened before they were born. It hit you, Mary. It was a movement across. It was in Egypt. It was in Tunis. It was in Syria, Jordan. It was in all to bring democracy to this part of the world.
And it didn't really work, I would guess.
In some places it did, and in some places it didn't. And there's in Egypt, they're still working on it. They're still fighting it. A gentleman in Tunisia, wanted to open up a fruit stand. Just wanted to sell fruit. So he went to the office to get a license, and they said no. And he just reached the point where he had enough. Like he's been trying to feed his family, been trying to get a business. There's so much red tape. There's so much bureaucracy. It's so difficult for anybody to make a living in these countries in a lot of ways, depending upon who you are and who your family is. He went outside the building and set himself on fire. He just had enough. And somebody recorded it. And then they shared it. And that was literally the spark. Because there was no hope. There was nothing left. Nothing unless we change this place from the top or from the inside, no one's lives are going to change. And so that's what they did. There's a really good documentary that I think, did I show it in your class, Mary, about Egypt and the Tahrir Square and the different groups, like the Muslim Brotherhood and the guy trying to get it's really good. It's called The Square. It's about Tahrir Square in Cairo. And during this time period, that's a really, really good piece. Well, take that, class. We talked about it. Oh, there he is. Oh, wow. There he is. I never saw his face before. Mohammed Bouazizi. Set himself on fire. They overthrew the dictator and they elected a moderate Islamic party. It starts here. Syria is dealing with this, and Russia's involved in Syria. Egypt.
Isn't like Libya or something?
Libya, yep. Jordan and Lebanon did some minor reforms. So a couple of kings stay in power, but they understood. What they want is work. What they want is opportunity. One thing that, not fashion, but one thing that authoritarian, that corporatist, that very conservative governments do is limit opportunity because they see all this, I think, through the lens of fear. The youth have opportunity. If the youth have jobs, if the youth learn this, or this, or the 30-year-olds are allowed to do this, and this, they may want more change. And that more change may be counter to the teachings of the prophet, which is the big thing in this part of the world that we cannot, gloss over because we don't quite get it or get it at all. Or on a more selfish level, it may mean we got to restructure government and I lose power. And I think we're starting to see in all parts of the world, people in power like it. And will fight tooth and nail to keep it, even if it is counterproductive to the needs of the people they're elected to serve. In Egypt, the president, Hosni Mubarak, was overthrown, and the first democratic elections in 60 years were held in Egypt. Because of this, there's still instability. You still have, and that leader was overthrown by the army, and there's all sorts of stuff going on. So again, part of this is the religion. Part of it, too, is a culture of being colonized or being somebody's protectorate or being part of an empire and not quite understanding self-rule, not understanding economic development, not understanding how to do this, and how do these countries in Southwest Asia, how do these countries in Africa or in Southeast Asia, when they become independent, catch up without help from the former colonizer, which is, some French colonies did that because France was willing to help them.
You can't really catch up with that.
Unless you have resources, unless you have an educated enough core to do it, but you're going to need some help.
Yeah, all they don't really have any resources.
We don't know what they have and don't have. They're a port city. They can invest in trade. They can work on infrastructure and be a trading center for the rest of that region of Africa.
Yeah, the trade is helped.
No, that could be their entity. They control trade. That could be their market. All the countries south of them use their ports. All the regions near them, let your port become more competitive than other ports because you have to pay to use a port. Every company that sails into the port of Long Beach pays to dock there. So if your ports are better and more competitive than, because Tunisia is not large, than the neighboring ports in your two border countries, then you get that business. If your roads are such that you can get goods to market more quickly, you're going to get more business. So trading can actually be an industry. I'm not talking about importing stuff, which is going to help your country. The Arab Spring uprisings led to the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi and his 40-year dictatorship in Libya. I don't know what that's saying, but I love graffiti. In Yemen, the poorest Arab nation, Arab Spring events led to the overthrow of the president of 33 years. They also attempted to eradicate all al-Qaeda forces. Yemen is a hot mess right now. And that's an understatement. Yemen is a disaster. Yemen needs the nations of the world who say they are the nations of the world to act like the nations of the world and do something. We need to start making other people mad at us for doing the right thing. Tell Russia to kiss it. Tell China to kiss it and do the right thing. France should do that. Heck, Russia should do that. China should do it. Stop being petty and do the right thing. Anyway.
Can you go back to the
Yep.
slide?
This
That's the
one?
one before that.
Yeah,
And what country is that, Libya?
Libya. Yep. Libya. 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 They're like in the sports doldrums right now. Wow. I mean, the Red Sox are good. That's all good. Still.
I just need the last word on that one. Thanks.
Remain.
Not that one. I'm good.
This one?
Yes, sir. I got it.
All right, perfect. Okay. All right, so here, the Arab Spring events have reshaped Middle East politically and economically and reveals the power of communication technologies. And we have seen it in America over the last 5 years, the power of social media to influence, positively or negatively, change. Social media matters. Social media can do good and should be used for good, not that stupid stuff. Sorry. Yeah, that's the Gen X in me coming out. That's the old man in me coming out. Armed uprisings in Libya, armed uprisings in Yemen, government overthrow here, significant protests here. But in these places, freedoms were limited to begin with. Okay, the government had a firmer grasp, like Somalia, Eritrea, Sudan, and South Sudan. And in all these parts where the media is so ensconced and the government is so ensconced in controlling things, it'd be very, very difficult to have wide-scale uprisings. But they did occur, even in Saudi Arabia. Heck, women can drive now in Saudi Arabia. And you're like, that's a huge deal in a traditionally fundamentalist Muslim community. Now, ironically, 3 years ago, the woman who led that movement was arrested for leading the movement. She's out now. But yes, women can get their license now.
Didn't the Queen drive around in a car?
Why would the queen need to? She's the queen.
I don't know, just like make a point or something.
No, because in Muslim cultures, a woman wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I would just.
But that's why. There's no reason to make a point. It's not what they do. And then Syria is just Syria because we don't have enough time. Again, the use of technology, Facebook, who's afraid of Twitter? It was, I mean, they were used for good then. The Arab Spring inspired a civil war in Syria against the repressive governor of Bashar al-Assad. He did use chemical weapons on his own people. But okay, and again, you know, when you, this whole class needs a big flow chart like mind map, just to connect stuff. Just in the stuff we've spoken of this week with how these countries were made and how they were dealt with and how these people got the position of power that they were placed in and what you do to keep it. Any opposition, you behave based upon what you learn. You know, you have to. It takes a lot of work to break the habits of your upbringing. So leaving poverty is a struggle. And then use some of the victims of al-Bashar's chemical weapon attacks. I'm not going to look at kids. Thank you. All right. Russia and Iran supported the Syrian government, while U.S. and EU supports opposition groups. And as you can see, the opposition groups are highly fractionalized. They're factions. They're split up. It's not a unified front. Russia and Iran, interesting enough. Aleppo is like ground zero for, thank you, for messness, okay? You see ISIL's kind of splintered in there, Palmyra. That's where the cave that's carved into the walls, like, and you go into it, that's there in Palmyra. It was in Indiana Jones.
And so is this kind of similar to like how World War I started, where it was like a country trying become more independent and then like one they supported those sides.
Kind of. I see your point from like the alliance bit. Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's analogous to that. It's analogous to that from the standpoint that they're going to offer assistance to the side they support. Yes, that they'll benefit from. All right, and then this just shows you Assad's troops, Iranian troops, Hezbollah, various militias. They're fighting. They're supporting the Kurds who are fighting the Army of Islam, there's the Free Syrian Army. These are all the people who are helping them. Turkey, the UK, the US, France, and Jordan are helping the Free Syrian Army. They're supporting the Kurds. The Kurds are fighting the Army of Islam for some strange reason. The Kurds are stuck in the middle, and then there's Israel. This is the Syrian Republic, and these are the people who want to stay in power, and these are the people who want to change it. The Free Syrian Army. There you go. I don't quite understand this flow chart right here. Unless the Kurds are just keeping their options open. Civil wars killed almost 500,000 or 3 million Syrian refugees have fled the country, and opposition-held city of Aleppo was largely destroyed. Or just about wasted. Enough. Did you see that? Read.
Is this still going on good?
Yes and no. My whole life, this is what this part of the world looks like to me. That's all I see. If I want to know about how these parts of the world were great, I got to read this stuff that we've been studying. I mean, you have to read about it. This is all I know of this part of the world. And nobody in my family can give me any context. So. I've seen that picture on the left. And that boy on the right. That little boy on the right was escaping to Italy. Little boy drowned on the beach. Yeah.
A lot of people are escaping like Italy.
Yeah. When you have children, if you're able to have children, these pictures, they're not funny. It's different. Syrian civil war allowed ISIL to control part of the country and prevents Russia and the U.S. to coordinate efforts to fight the terror group, because they have these two groups, Russia and the U.S., assisting different groups, so they're free to do what they want. Like they're taking advantage of a divided opposition. And again, this is a little older, because ISIL is pretty much a non-thing anymore. Thank you, Kurds.
Who's the group that attacked on 9/11?
Al-Qaeda,
Are they also, where are they from?
Afghanistan, via Saudi Arabia. Yes. They weren't fundamental enough. And Unit 8 is finished. Now, so this is our setup moving forward. The focus of the issues facing our planet moving forward are in this part of the world, geographically south of this part of the world in Africa. Actually, they're everywhere. Because the issues that this brings up are not just political. They're social, they're environmental, they're technological, and all those things will be addressed in Unit 9. All right. I will post this afternoon. And if you want to hang around for a second, I'll load the Kahoot and I'll let you back in.
Is it gonna be like a
I'm gonna go and make my lunch. And I'll be back.
Thank you.